And away we go. It is chicken dinner, and most importantly, it is March. Welcome to it. Sam Paniotovich with you, powered by Odds Logic. So much to get to, so little time. If you watch the morning show Bet Sweats, you know I've already risked thousands of dollars on the Missouri Valley today, and maybe your boy has a little Evansville and Murray State action, which should tip off momentarily from St. Louis. We have a great guest list today. We're going to do a roundtable with three very, very solid college basketball bettors. That'll be Tom Casale, John Martin, and the Degenerate, who I believe is still in witness protection, so can't use first and last, but he is a hysterical follow on Twitter and a very, very good bettor. But before we do any of that, my guy, Mark Titus from Barstool Sports, the Mark Titus Show, and Mostly Sports, and the Yak, and an author, and Club Trillion, and everything else under the sun, joins me to lead off the show. My favorite college basketball personality. I'm actually I'm a little surprised you said yes. I made you minus 110, minus 110. Yes, no.
Well, yeah, I've done this show before, Sammy. Come on now. I'm not too good for you. It's very kind words to introduce me, but I'm happy to be here and happy to help any way I can. All of your viewers lose a lot of money this March. That's what I do best. Is I talk up every team. The older I get, the more I've turned into like Dick Vitale, where I think every team is good. And I just talk about by the end of the show, I'll probably say like 9 teams can win the national championship, which does not help. So I'm going to try to do better this time and lock in.
Well, the first time we had you on Chicken Dinner, you actually laid out the case for 2 teams. So that year you only had 2. If we get to 9, we'll allow it. But that was the year you literally said it will be either Gonzaga or Baylor.
Oh, yeah. That was easy. That year was easy.
Well, remember, they were trekking, and then COVID killed the season.
Yeah.
So then the next year, you ran it back, and they ran it back, and Baylor beat Zaga. We've had a couple seasons in the last 5 years where it's been this team, or everybody else. So you laid out Baylor Gonzaga many years ago. Last year, everybody was talking UConn or Purdue or the field. And now this year, as you know, it's Duke Auburn or the field.
Right.
I'm sure you've been asked this. I'm sure you've talked about it. Is it fair that we keep putting 2 teams in a bucket and then everybody else in another bucket?
I think so, but I don't think the gap. Like, I love Florida. I like Houston a lot, but I still think there's a pretty sizable gap to me between Auburn and Duke and everybody else. But I'm getting a little cautious because I love what I'm seeing out of these Florida Gators lately. I'm falling in love with Florida in a way that makes me uncomfortable. I got the Final Four 07 right behind my shoulder, and saying those words that I like Florida basketball is disgusting to me. But yeah, this team has guard play. They have Condon had a great game against Bama last night. He's playing really well. They play defense. They shoot the ball well. There's a lot to like about them. But yeah, I mean, the totality of the season, it has been Duke and Auburn and everyone else. I'm very, very high on Duke, of course. Who's not? I think you're cautious about the ACC is a little weak this year, and it's weird that like the SEC teams are the battle tested ones, and suddenly we're looking at a Duke team that's like, you're like, have they played anybody? And how many times have you ever said that about Duke ever in the history of Duke basketball? So that concerns me a little bit. But I think if you've watched like all these teams throughout the year, Auburn and Duke are in a class of their own and have looked like when they're at their best. I don't think there's much that any other team can do. I think as much as I like Houston and Florida and Bama and to like some of these other teams, if Duke and Auburn play A- basketball even, I'm not sure what the rest of the field can do about it.
But the beauty of the sport is that it just takes one good game or conversely one bad game for one of these top dogs to go down. And if the shots aren't falling in this day and age, if teams aren't making threes, they could lose not to anybody, but anybody in the round of 8, round of 4 could lose. And I'm glad that you looked over your shoulder there. I don't want to play, memory lane here, but I imagine having a front row seat to watch Greg Oden and Joakim Noah was something else.
It was pretty fun. Yeah, it was. It's crazy because I go to the Final Four every year now to cover it or whatever it is I do there. And my seats are so much worse. And I'm like, this is insane that I took it for granted when I was there that I had the best seat in the house. Yeah, it was crazy. And I was so stupid. I was a freshman that year on that team. And I was like, was like, oh, this college basketball thing's pretty sick. We'll be back here for sure at some point in the next 3 years. And I took it for granted, Sammy. We have not been back, so that's a bummer. But
yeah, that first Final Four I went to was in Dallas. It was 2014. I was so excited. I was going on the road for the first time as a young reporter, and I thought, man, this is great. I'm going to be at the Final Four. I'm going to love this. I'm going to cover this to the best of my ability. And that was the first Final Four, I believe, at Jerry World. And I was in the fucking ceiling. I was so high, like you could see nothing.
Yeah, no.
And I almost got chased out of there because I walked around. I didn't have my soft drink in a Powerade cup, and somebody was ready to murder me.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's quite an experience, man. It is. They jam those buildings too, which is maybe a different story for a different day.
That's amateur basketball, baby.
Yeah. How dare you not have your Coca-Cola in a Powerade cup? Get out. All right, so we know you like everybody, and everybody likes you. Who are you not high on? Who is a team that you think maybe not bounced in the first round or second round, but who's a team that everybody likes that maybe you're not as high on?
I think you go to Tennessee, which like I don't hate Rick Barnes as much as a lot of people seem to in terms of like not being able to trust him in March. I think that's how the sport works, is that guys can't break through until they can, which by the way, Rick Barnes has been to a Final Four, but there's like this narrative that like you can't ever make it to a Final Four. He went there 20 years ago. But it's not because of that. It's like the way the team plays, it just feels like a quintessence. Like everything that you would be cautious about with the Tennessee Rick Barnes style team exists with this team, which is to say like the offense just disappears for way too long. I think their defense is really, really good, but also if you can push tempo on them a little bit and get some quick ones, they're not that good. They're really good in a half court setting. So I think Tennessee's a team that like the metrics like a lot. I think their resume is great. I think they can beat anybody on any given night, but they aren't a team that I see like actually being Final Four national title good. That's a team that comes to mind is like I don't know how far I'll have them in my bracket. A lot of it will depend on matchups, but they're in a running for a 1 seed still. I know they lost last night at Ole Miss, but there's a world where Tennessee's a 1, and I don't see them as being at that level. Another one would be like Michigan, but I think that secret's kind of out at this point. Michigan was a team that was racking up wins like crazy for a while, and boy, they were just getting by the skin of their teeth and pulling shit out of their ass left and right. And now they're losing a little bit more, so that one's not quite as much of a secret. But yeah, they got like 2 really good players, and otherwise the team's not all that great. But I would say, yeah, as far as like the top, the teams that could conceivably win this thing, but I don't really love that much. I'd say Tennessee's probably the number 1 team that comes to mind.
That said, there's something to be said about the teams that are either too high that everybody likes or the teams that everybody hates. And, you know where I'm going with this, and you warned me last year. I remember texting you in late February saying, my guys are about to get hot at Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, nah. And I said, dude, I think they got it. I think they're going to figure it out. And I'll never forget, they went to Tennessee as like a 9-point dog and won wire to wire.
Yeah.
And then I turned on the TV Selection Sunday, and everybody on TV, look out for Kentucky. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no. And then they couldn't guard baby Titus. The white, can we guard the white kid?
Yeah.
Golke, right?
Yeah.
Oakland. So like the last thing I ever want to do is put the sexiest team on planet Earth far in my bracket. And I also, to be honest with you, I'm trying to figure out, and again, everything's predicated on the bracket. But if I were to pose to you right now, you have 2 teams that nobody wants to put far. Would you rather get weird with Gonzaga or Kansas?
Okay. Oh boy. Oh, they're both so stinky, Sam. They're both.
Hey, you got to pick one.
I think Gonzaga. I know I got to pick one. I think Gonzaga. Gonzaga's recent history of making the Sweet 16 every single year is impressive, and I do think that Gonzaga is probably the better team. But I would lean towards Kansas just because of the potential. And I think like we have seen Kansas sort of put it together for spurts this year. Gonzaga, if you look at Gonzaga's resume, there's a very good chance that when the dust settles, Gonzaga beat one NCAA tournament team, and it was Baylor at the start of the year, literally the very first game of the season, and that's it. And that's the only team.
Their best game too.
And that worries me.
Their best game of the year.
Their best game, yeah. But that was November 4th.
I know.
And I'm not sure they've beaten an NCAA tournament team since then. So I think Kansas has been a massive disappointment, maybe the biggest disappointment in college basketball. They were the preseason #1 team, but the roster is like not. The pieces don't fit, but there's enough talent there, and there's enough. I think they can play defense. I think they can pull that together, and I think like Zeke Mayo can score a little bit when he gets going. Hunter Dickinson's like, I don't know if he's the worst bad player or the worst good player or the best bad player in college basketball history. I'm still trying to figure that calculus out, but he's like not. He is a productive player, and I don't know. I think I like the pieces on Kansas more, but I hate both teams, to be completely honest with you.
We kind of got an answer there. We kind of like a Kansas answer. How about a sleeper team?
Yeah,
how about a
Kansas?
VCU?
I'll say this. I'll to piggyback on my answer. I'll say this. I think Kansas is going to be a higher seed. I think I love the 1 seeds this year, assuming that Florida gets the last 1 seed. And I think Gonzaga is going to come in at like an 8 or 8 or a 9 probably. And I don't love that second round matchup for them. Whereas like Kansas, they're gonna have more of an opportunity for the bracket to break. So I like Kansas in that regard. Sleeper teams, VCU has been ripping through the A10 this year. I like them a lot. I don't know. Drake is so interesting to me because they lost like basically everybody, and then like the story of Drake, they just brought in all these D2 transfers, and they're just like destroying. Yeah, like their entire roster is like from a D2 school apparently. It's just like a bunch of D2 guys that were really good, and now they've moved up to D1, and they're having a hell of a year. So they're interesting to me. I don't know. Can I say Ohio State? Can I say Ohio State?
I don't know that a Big Ten power, maybe not this year. I don't know that a Big Ten juggernaut that used to be. I don't know. You could say Ohio State. Can they be? I mean, with 13 losses, I guess they could.
We're not good, but we have guard play, and the reason I'm like slowly being delusional about maybe Ohio State doing something is that we have 3 guards that can score, and if the game just evolves into like just like one-on-one type basketball, which can happen in the tournament. I'm talking myself into that. We have no big guys and we don't guard, so I'm really worried about that part.
Good.
But no, I got to be honest. Like for all the talk with this event that in the tournament that it's the madness and it's anybody can beat anybody and all that kind of stuff. I think we're at a spot this year, which has happened in a lot in recent years. I mean, 6 of the last 7 tournaments have been won by 1 seeds, and I think this year is trending that way as well, where it's like very top heavy. And I think a lot gets made of like, so the idea of a Cinderella going on a run. I just don't think the way the landscape looks to me this year, I think the top teams are like considerably better than like the mid-level teams, So I don't think this is going to be a chaos year. I think you could get like, obviously you're going to get upsets, but I don't see this as like a Final Four where you have a 7 and an 8 and a, somehow a 12 snuck in there or whatever else, like I think we're going to see there's going to be a lot of chalk by the time San Antonio arrives. I think.
Let me write this down. Mark Titus does not have UC San Diego in Final Four. Okay. Just want to write that down. So somebody the other day was trying to sell me on UC San Diego, and I thought if they were to play a team like Duke,
dude,
just think of the talent mismatch between. I mean, Duke's got maybe this year alone 3 NBA guys, and maybe on the roster in totality maybe 5, and San Diego unfortunately has none. Not that like is the end all be all, but I mean we're talking like on the Madden scale, Duke is a 98, and UC San Diego talent wise is like a 70.
Duke's got so much length, so much size. I think like it's weird because Duke's probably going to be the #1 team in the country when the new poll comes out, and they have the Player of the Year, and then the guy who's going to be the #1 pick. And I still somehow think like this Duke season is flying under the radar somehow. Like I think that this team is in a spot to be a historically great Duke team. Now they have to win. They have to win it all. They have, I don't want to prematurely crown them, but they're not a perfect basketball team, but they are just unbelievable. Like it all starts with Cooper Flag. He can do everything there is to do on a basketball court. He does it well. Con Knipple is like quietly having he's having like a third team All-American type season, but like I don't think anybody even notices or is paying that other than NBA scouts because all the attention is on Cooper Flag. They like you said, they have so many NBA guys. Like Isaiah Evans comes off the bench. He's going to play in the league. Maybe he's not going to go this year and he'll come back to Duke next year, but like at some point he's going to be a solid NBA player. And they just like pull this guy off the bench and are like, hit some threes for us. And if he's not hitting, they just throw his ass back on the bench and they don't really need him. It's crazy how good this team is. But you know, I think this team's better than the Zion team, and that's the team that kind of get compared to because that was the last Duke team we saw led by so many freshmen and kind of had the phenom leading them. And that team obviously lost in the Elite Eight and didn't make the Final Four. But I think this team's better, and I think you know the schedule worries me. They haven't been tested a lot in the ACC, but they are so good, and they're just wrecking everybody. They're winning by like 40 points every night. It's crazy.
Yeah, and people think they can't keep it up, and I would counter that they can. Last thing here, and then we'll spring you and get to the roundtable. The importance of coaching. And I want to specifically focus on that second day of the weekend. And obviously you were on some teams that made some runs. You know, Thad, I don't think Thad ever got the credit he deserved on the whiteboard. And it does take a lot because when you play Thursday or Friday and got to get into the fucking hotel ballroom and lay the lines on the carpet and scheme your way to success, right? How important is it to have a coach that not only knows what he's doing, but excels at the game plan to have that quick turnaround from Thursday to Saturday or Friday to Sunday?
Yeah, I think it matters immensely. And I think that the way you can overcome like a coach that maybe is not as good at that is if you're a team that can make sure you play these your terms. And what I mean by that is like Houston's a great example of like, I don't think Houston is one of the better teams in terms of talent, in terms of raw talent. They have guys that can play. But what they're so good at is every game seemingly is played on their terms. And in a quick turnaround setting, like going into a game like that and saying, we're going to play the game on our terms, which is to say, we're going to muck it up. We're going to get in your ass and guard you the entire length of the floor. I mean, Rick Pitino's the other way. St. John's, we haven't even talked about him. That's what St. John's is going to do to a lot of teams, and they have done all season. But yeah, it matters greatly, and I think that you know the quick turnaround is it becomes evident when you see guys struggle in the second round, and then you also see like the Cinderella stories kind of happen, and then the teams get like a little bit of a break to actually look at the film, and then they go into the Sweet 16 and get absolutely trounced because you know they're not being taken lightly by the big dogs. So yeah, I think it's going to matter a lot, but I think the thing that stands out to me more than anything else is like the teams that have established a culture and they know it doesn't matter who we're playing on the other side because, you know, a quick turnaround or not, or scouting or not, we know who we are and we're going to show up and play this game on our terms. And those are the teams that I think have the most success in this thing.
That's Mark Titus, Barstool Sports. You can watch Mostly Sports with Mark and Brandon Walker, as you see right now on YouTube and X. Also, the Mark Titus Show. And also on the Yak, which I never quite know what's going to happen on the Yak when I watch. And somehow I'm always shocked at what could unfold on that show, man.
I'm right there with you for what it's worth. So thanks, Sammy. This was fun.
I appreciate you making time, man.
All right. See you, dude.
There goes Mark Titus. Loves Florida and maybe doesn't have a sleeper this year, but that's okay. I mean, we've had how many years in the last 5 years have we had one of the best teams win it all, and not a lot of really good teams that come out of nowhere. It's been a cream rising situation the last 5 years, at least from what I can remember. And I don't remember much. All right, roundtable time. These guys bet, they fire. Some of them can't even be named in public. Let's bring on my three guests here. Tom Casale, John Martin, and a man who will only be known as the Degenerate. I asked, are we doing first, last? And you said no. So, boys, welcome to the show. Let's start clockwise here. Degenerate, most important thing when it comes to March Madness betting. What have you gathered? What have you put together over the last 10, 15 years of betting on this tournament that is important every time you look at a bracket or look at a betting screen?
I look for dog. and I look for defense. And I will attribute this to San Diego State. When I admittedly do not watch college basketball religiously. I love it. I love betting on it. I don't like watching it. You ever seen Moneyball? You know, when Billy Bean, when the A's are playing, he's on the treadmill. He just puts on the radio for 5 seconds and then turns it off. It's the most frustrating sport in the world. But going into March Madness, I start to get eyes on it, and I look for dogs. San Diego State, when I watched them come back, I think in their conference tournament game against Utah State, I just saw 5 dudes on the court that were going to be a nightmare out in a tournament-style play. So I'm looking for that this year. I jumped in on St. John's because of it. Their offense is going to make me want to rip. Well, I don't have hair anymore, but they're gonna make me very angry at times for sure. But I just like scrappy, really good defense in tournament play.
John Martin, how about you?
Hi. I really like to get involved with coaches that I think are good coaches and not bad coaches. And there are bad coaches, by the way, that make the NCAA tournament all the time. They're going to be bad coaches from the SEC that make the tournament. And I think the key is really finding out and knowing, okay, like who's really like that, right? Who's really like that out of bounds? Who's really like that, motivationally? Obviously there's a top tier, but I'm really big on. There are coaches I've sworn off. I won't bet Shaka Smart ever, like under any circumstances. I will not bet Shaka Smart, especially in a high leverage game. Like sure he'll beat up on a DePaul or something like that, but in a high leverage game, I'll never bet him. So I think it's really important to identify coaches that you appreciate and respect. I'll bet Kelvin Sampson blindly against anybody, any number. I've won, I've lost that way, but I'm comfortable with it. So I just think when you get into these settings, understanding who you're comfortable with as a coach is super important.
Tom Casale, stoic as ever. Look at that. Statuesque. What do you think, pal?
Yeah, no, I agree with what everybody said. There's 3 metrics I like to look at during the tournament. Offensive rebounding, because you're not going to shoot well every night, right? And you're going to have to hit the boards. Turnovers. If you turn the ball over a lot, we saw this when Texas played Abilene Christian a couple years ago, you could be ripe for an early upset. Think Michigan, a lot of turnovers. And then getting to the free throw line. Some teams get to the free throw line a lot, others don't. That can be the difference in close games. And listen, I think the first matchup matters. Sam, last year I was all ready to bet against Alabama, and then I saw Charleston. Well, Charleston plays the same style. They don't have as many athletes, they don't have as much talent, and they don't have as much depth. Alabama blows them out, wins another game, and then they get rolling. I actually think if Alabama was in a different bracket last year, they probably go out early. So I think all that stuff matters when I'm looking at the seedings.
Yeah, I think we use that term on the morning show, like when you play your older brother on steroids. That's what that matchup was. And I'll never forget, I lost a lot of money one year. I went into the game thinking, VCU's guards. And who did they get decked by? Was it Trey? Who was the guard at Michigan? Trey Burke and Timmy Hardaway Jr. beat the shit out of them for 40 minutes because VCU played fast, but Michigan had 2 NBA guards.
That's because you bet Shaka Smart. I mean, that was the first job. I told you you're not supposed to do that.
I know. I got to go back to 2013. I was trying to remember the name of that random Michigan guard, Trey Burke, who hit that big shot against Kansas.
I thought he would be an all-star, by the way. I thought he was really about to be like a legit great pro. Was not at all.
So we're all obviously in different cities, and we're doing this on YouTube and X. It's not going to be as smooth as maybe I would like it to be, but let me just throw this question into the bucket. I saw this market today. Caught the pen, by the way. I saw SEC against the field. And as we all know, because we do this every day, we hear all the time, Duke Auburn against everybody else. And nobody's putting up a market on that. But one book put SEC against the field, and the SEC was minus 140. Who wants to go first? Have at it.
I'll go first. I was actually just talking about this today with my following about how I don't really – there's no one in the Big Ten that I'm really scared of. I watched Maryland beat Michigan. I had Michigan. That was a miserable experience. But I know Michigan State and Izzo, we talk about coaches. I couldn't agree more. And that's one of the reasons I'm apprehensive on buying in on this Tennessee team. And one of my good friends and one of the best bettors I know that's his team going into this year, and I don't want nothing to do with Rick Barnes. But we were talking about it, and I was thinking about conferences, and I heard there was a bet of just Duke and Auburn or the field. And out of all the conferences, so I live in New York, and I'm going to go to the Big East tournament. And I thought the SEC tournament in Nashville sounds like one of the best sporting events that you could probably attend, at least in this time of year. But I was creeping over to the Big 12. I think I'm not in love, but I'm starting to like this Texas Tech team. I took a flyer on Kansas. Don't even get me started. I know that's not hitting. I just think it's insane value at like 75-1. I just have to try it. But I don't know, because I think I'd probably take a shot at the field outside of the SEC. You were just talking to Titus about Florida. How do you not be a prisoner of the moment and love Florida after they just beat up Alabama on their home court on senior night? Like, if you put a gun to my head right now after what just happened last night, that's probably the team I'm going to take. But I don't know. I'll take the field because I like Texas Tech and I like St. John's.
It really does feel like realistically, you get Auburn, you get Florida, you get Bama. I know you get the whole conference, but let's be real. It feels like it's those three, Johnny. And I know you like Florida. You were on the show today. You love the Gators.
Yeah, it's impossible not to. I think Degenerate brings up Texas Tech. When you asked me about this on your show this morning, I didn't talk about them, but that's an interesting one because they definitely could make a very deep run. They're legit. And, if you want to – like Iowa State is better than what they've shown, the last couple of weeks. They've been, dealing with injuries in and out. I mean, I still think that's they were up 15 or whatever it was on Auburn and Maui. I still think there's a different gear with them. But I don't know. I just think the consistency of the SEC is kind of where I would have to roll with them. Again, I don't know if the price is necessarily right is the problem. Maybe it should be more like, what did you say it was? Minus 140?
Yeah.
Is that maybe it should be like minus, 125 or something. But I still think if you force me to bet that, I would have to go, because as much as I want to agree about Tennessee and we know we've all been let down. I mean, they're Zach Edey away from being in the Final Four last year, and I know that was Dog to Connect and everything he's done, but I mean that team is finding ways to win as well for the most part, and their defense is going to travel. So I think I'm going to give the slight edge to the SEC over the field, although I don't think it's some big gap by any means.
I still remember vividly Tennessee being in control and then not being in control. I think, Tom, did we both have Tennessee in that game against Purdue last year?
Yeah.
And they just completely fell apart right after our Clemson side fell apart against Alabama. It was the tournament last year of just having the dog fight for 20 and then not fight for the second 20. Not to go down the rabbit hole there, but what about you, Tom? SEC minus 140.
Yeah, well, listen, my weakness is always falling in love with the SEC because I grew up watching the greatest team ever assembled, the UNLV Running Rebels. They played fast. They press you. They create turnovers. That's how all the teams in the SEC play, right? They don't play like that in the Big Ten. And then when you get in the tournament, it doesn't always translate, right? Because they get away with athleticism, and some of these teams slow them down, like Yale. But here's the thing: in June, I took Auburn at 28-1. I thought they were the best team. I haven't bet many futures since, because I think I'm holding the card on the best team. That's who I think the best team is Auburn. And I think Auburn's going to win it all if things go their way. So I kind of agree. I think this is I don't know if there's value betting it at minus 140. It's the tournament, Duke's in there, Houston's in there. But I do believe two of the five best teams are Florida and Auburn. So you're getting a shot there. Minus 120, maybe minus 140 is a little too steep.
Well, every question is predicated on what somebody's holding, right? And not to bring up the gun to head thing again, but Degenerate did it first. If I made you bet that, Tom, your answer would be different than mine or different than John's because you're holding Auburn. So from your perspective, you already have Auburn in pocket. Now maybe you take, Duke,
field, right.
Houston,
Yeah.
Texas Tech, right? Like your calculus is different because of your future.
Correct.
Yeah. So, and we We got one too. We got a team that we don't love, but we keep betting. Degenerate. Tom and I, we have enough Gonzaga to feed a small family. And,
But listen, in my defense, I took him back in April. Sam, I don't know what you're thinking. You took him recently. I mean, at least I took him a year ago, so I got an excuse for this.
I took 60, and I thought, here's what I need. I need them to not be 8 or 9. If they're 8 or 9, I'm fucked. But if they can win the WCC or lose and fall to a 10, like I want no part of them against a 1, at least early. But it's not going to win. Tripp is saying on YouTube. So I saw this market yesterday with the SEC minus 140 and the field at plus 110. According to Tripp, who comments right here on the show live, DraftKings has field minus 40 and SEC plus 10.
Mm-hmm.
That changes the conversation, does it not?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that plus 110. I mean, if I could get more than $5 on it, I'd bet it.
Well, it's DraftKings. You could bet more than $5 at DraftKings. Other places, I bet Rivers, you can get like 36.
I haven't been able to bet more than $5 at on NFL. I can, but on college basketball, I don't even open the app. I don't even worry about it, man. So congrats to anybody that can bet there, but that is not me.
You tried to bet
college basketball genius. Okay, that was earned at DraftKings.
I tried to bet this morning. I'm sure you guys can all relate to this. I logged in to one of my outs and I went to the Horizon, or not the Horizon, the Mo Valley. Go unders, by the way. And I tried to bet 300 on Bradley to win the Missouri Valley. And Bradley's the second team on the list, right? Drake's favored, and then it's Bradley. And I got the wheel, and this is a $300 bet. I mean, come on. And I'm not taking a shot on a team that's 15 or 30 or 50 to 1. It's one of the favorites. And finally, the wheel said, we'll give you $50. And I'm like, this is the real problem in the space. Like, I can't bet $300 on a team at 3 to 1.
The same thing happened to me when I tried to bet Bradley myself. So listen, I used to be a bookie. I used to take thousands of dollars of bets of drunk guys running down the street in Cortland, New York. I mean, either be a bookie in a sports book or don't. It's that simple. People are going to lose. I don't understand. Does anyone understand the theory behind it? Because even good bettors, like someone like, I mean, I'm going to have rough patches. I'm going to lose. I mean, like you said, they let you bet NFL. Yeah, keep letting me bet NFL. You'll even it out. You know what I mean? Like I don't really understand. Do you guys understand why it's like that? Because it seems insane to me, especially when you're betting futures. You know how hard it is to win futures?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Go ahead, guys.
I mean, I don't understand at all. I mean, obviously you get profiled and they're trying to run a business and it's a for-profit business and guys like us who, have a pulse. I'm not even like talking about, levels or degrees of, do you work with a syndicate or a sharp or whatever? We just have pulses.
Yeah.
And that's enough to get us limited at a shop like that. I mean, it's a business and they identify us as people that are going to take away from that business. And it's their right, but I don't know how good it is for them long term.
Tom makes a good point because it's like you can't stay hot forever, you can't stay cold forever. And I remember, I think it was not this December, but the year before, I had a nice like 40 and 15 run in college basketball. Sure enough, I made a tweet about it. It gets all this attention and this likes. I followed it up by going 6 and 22, which got 10 times the engagement, obviously, and very friendly DMs. But no, it's funny. I mean, that you would probably, if you were like a local bookie at the time and you're taking my action and I'm betting on these stupid ass teams, you're probably like, all right, well, I'm done. And as soon as you stop somebody, that's when they go cold. Or, if you're on a cold streak, and I'm not obviously be responsible, but that as soon as you stop, that's when it's like, oh, I'm not going to bet today, but I like these 10 games, and you would go 8 and 2. So, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, let's not act like bookies aren't the same way, though. I don't know how you ran yours, but I've had bookies tell me when they give me an account, they say, do not bet any college basketball. Do not bet any college basketball, or you're done. And I've had one bookie say, if you bet on the NBA, I will raise your limits. So, it just depends, person to person. But yeah, like I'm very careful. I'm very careful about where I bet college basketball because I know that the sensitivity to those bets is extremely, extremely high. And there's one account I cannot afford to lose. And so, like, you know, you want to, I get all these, you know, team from the America East under first. I ain't touching it. I ain't putting it in. It ain't happening because I know what happens if I do. I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm
I
done. I'm
ruined
toast.
myself. I ruined myself on Feast Week. I told the story. John, you've heard the story. I tried to bet a dime on a Chicago State under like the Monday morning of Feast Week. There's no other games on the board at 11 o'clock Eastern. And I bet it and it moved. And since then, they've gotten even more creative now at this account. I can bet 100 until the morning steam is over. And then they knock me up to like 200. So I can't even bet.
Very
Like
generous.
if the game is at 7 Eastern, I can bet it at 5 Eastern for the max in college. But
I wouldn't even give them the information. I wouldn't even do.
I try
fuck
not
around
to.
with it.
But you know,
Yeah.
sometimes you kind of like you want to test it
I
a
get
little
it.
bit.
Yeah.
All right. So my very AI driven title of the show is Strategies for Success in March Madness Betting. I did not come up with that. AI did. So thanks to AI. But I wanted to talk about something that I've learned over the last 20 years of betting this tournament that I would not do. And I think a lot of us now have friends that bet live. And live, if you're not disciplined, can be a big problem.
Mm.
And perfect example, teams catching 7 pre-flop, goes down 10, goes down 14, and then we go to commercial, and this same dog that was getting 7 before the game is now getting 11.5. And it's like, ooh, well, there's value there. Right now I'm getting 11.5. And I found more times from personal experience, chasing that dead dog down the hole is one of the worst things you can do in March Madness. I know some will bounce back, some will fight. It's not a blanket statement, but generally speaking, I think if you take 10 teams at worst prices in game, you're going to lose 6 out of 10, which is bad. So that's my big no-no in the tournament. Let's start again with Degenerate and go around the horn. Is there a lesson you've learned, whether it be from yourself or from a friend, where this is a habit that you either had to break or had to eliminate betting March Madness?
That's a really good question. I mean, I don't know that there's one that I had to break. I kind of, I try to find new strategies or systems that work each year differently, because I find like what works one year for you won't work the following year. Like you always kind of have to evolve a little bit. And what I was doing is with totals. So let's say a total was like 140. And, you know, obviously the pace of the game would mean that the first half you need to score about 70 points. Well, let's say it was like 24-16, you know, obviously it's pretty simple, but you would assume that the offense would pick up in that second half. So what I would do is kind of just try to snipe that. And I was just taking first half unders, especially in the early rounds of the tournaments, not so much in like the Sweet 16, the Elite 8 and everything. But I would find that, you know, the nerves of a lot of these teams and these higher seeds and everything would come out and their shooting wouldn't be as good. And then I would take those first half unders and I would get in, get out. And then if it didn't hit, I would kind of double down, or martingale, whatever you want to call it, on the second half, because it would kind of average out and I would double my units on it. I had phenomenal success doing this about 2 years ago at a pretty good rate. My following was catching on to it and everything. But again, the following year, it didn't really work out. I don't have anything like going into it that I'm looking for. I guess the one weird thing that I have in the back of my head, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I try to not ride or bet on teams that peaked or won their conference tournament. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad or good strategy. I guess it's kind of just the best I can provide. But, you know, I and that team I'm already having my eye on right now is Michigan State. If Michigan State plays well throughout the Big Ten tournament, wins or gets to the final, I'm going to fade them because I think they're going to be an early exit. And I hope teams that I have my eye on have early exits in their conference tournament. And then I think they're going to come out really well in March. So that's kind of what I look for.
Johnny, how about you?
Yeah, I think you know, there's 2 parts. One is from a, you know, sort of strategic part of it, as it relates to the actual sport and the games, is, you know, usually you can kind of tell which conferences are fugazi. Like I think that this year might be the Big Ten. I don't think anybody is going to argue that, right? But like, I just identify a conference that you think is going to be overvalued in this thing. Like in most years, that's going to be like a Mountain West. It was not true last year, but I like to fade conferences kind of as a whole. If I think it's just an overvalued or weaker conference that maybe is getting more respect than it deserves, I'll fade the whole conference. Because what edge do you really have, on March 18th on a college basketball game in the tournament, right? I mean, we could sit around here and fucking bullshit, but we don't.
Right.
And then the other thing that I would say too, about me personally that I had to do, I won't live bet. I had to break myself of that habit, because what I found myself doing was overreacting to things that, emotionally, right, to the game. If I had an underdog that was getting their dick kicked in, I would be so tempted to play the other way, not to back the dog again, but to play the other way, because like, oh my God, they're getting run out of the building. Or if I have a favorite that is down early, I had a bad habit of just hating my bets when I was watching and wanting to get off of them. That's me. Everybody's maybe that doesn't have that problem, but I had to get to a point where I was like, all right, I made the bet for a reason. I'm not touching it. I'm not looking at it. I'm watching the game. I'm letting it play out. Because you guys know in college basketball, man, halves can be completely opposite, right? It happens all the time. So I had to get there, and it's especially true in March Madness and neutral sites and different rims and things like that. So no live betting is the best way for me.
Tom?
Yeah, no, that's a great point about the edges. Listen, as a fan, I love March Madness. I don't really love it as a bettor. Our edges are gone. I mean, bring me back to November, baby. That's my time. When we're betting Fairfield versus Maine. That's when people who really dive into college basketball, where we have our edges. We don't really have edges in March. I'll be honest with everybody. Some March Madnesses go my way and some don't. It's just the way it is. But the thing I've noticed, and Sam, I talk about this every year with you, is the underdogs. March Madness has made $1 billion on Cinderella and all this stuff, and it's gone to the betting side. You look at a game last year, and Sam, I know you were on this game, so I'm not personally attacking you, but McNeese State's getting 4.5 against Gonzaga. I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. There's no value there. Yeah. Right. Years ago, that's 8 or 9. So I'm actually finding myself betting more of those 4 to 7 point favorites, because everyone's trying to find, everyone's watching TV. How many times are we going to hear that Colgate is this great team because they played one close game in the NCAA tournament in 2019 against Tennessee, right? Like everyone's looking for those teams to bet, when now I'm starting to go the other way. Yeah, it's interesting. And then, just one last thing about conferences. I think that was a good point about the strengths of conferences. And what I would look for is like the SEC, teams like Ole Miss, who can't wait to get the hell out of there and not play Auburn and Florida and Alabama every night, right? Like Ole Miss is a really good team that has some losses. But I think when they get out of the SEC, teams like that at the middle to bottom part of the SEC, they could be tough in the first couple rounds.
Luckily, I did stay off McNeese last year. We had McNeese circled, though, from November on. And then we saw the lines come out. And, Tom, we always text day before, what are we looking for? What's our sweet spot? And then when they had Zaga McNeese 4.5, 5, only on the heels of Seth Davis writing McNeese on TV, right. I'm like, oh, they're fucked.
You could probably win. Yeah, you know what? You could probably bet a lot of money just doing that. Who the guys on TV are telling you who the big upsets are. You probably fade those. You go 80%.
Another thing, too, that I really love to do, and again, nothing, as Degenerate said, nothing is blanket. Nothing is blind. I don't think there's this mass net you can cast over a system or a strategy. But I have really, I've started to learn that I love these roles more than maybe I ever have. When that Cinderella does win that game or make that second weekend, I love to bet against them, and I do it first half. Like, I remember, was it St. Peter's in Carolina a few years ago when St. Peter's got hot?
Yes.
And the game line was only 12.
Yes.
And the first half was Carolina -8, and they beat the shit out of them.
Because again, you have to remove, right? You're like, if this game was played in December, what would this number be?
20. Right? The line would be 20.
Forget who cares about the NCAA tournament? Like, this is a standalone game, and first of all, you're not even looking at it. But if you are, the number is going to be probably almost double what it actually was. So that is what separates, winners and losers. Is
Well,
being
and
able
the
to
other
do
part
that.
of that too. So the team wins. Say they win 2, and then it's for 4 days. It's that you're parading around the coach, and he's he's taking phone calls, and his agent's talking to other schools, and then they come out and they play a blue
Yes.
blood, and it's like,
Yes.
oh, right.
But
And
can I just stand up really quickly though for one that handled business as an underdog in the next game? That'd be Fairleigh Dickinson. They beat Purdue and they covered them. They got their ass kicked by FAU, but they did cover that. It was ungodly. It was like 19-20, but they did cover, Sammy. Okay, put some respect on Fairleigh Dickinson.
As I said, it's not a blanket, but those teams that come in so sexy, and then you watch the odds screen, and it goes from 9 to 10 to 11. And then you get an email from BetMGM. Not that those are the end all be all, but 85% are on the dog here, huh? Oh, interesting. Those are the ones. Those are the ones that I find myself betting more and more money on. The dead, public, upset, riddled underdog. Where was I? I started to get excited.
You
there.
guys are
No,
Gonzaga fans, right? I think the worst beat I had and the heaviest I went on fading a trendy dog. Do you remember when they played Arkansas? And I think they were 9.5-point favorites.
What year was that?
I think that was probably
it's the year they played the title game, right, against Baylor. Was that the year?
No, they lost.
No.
Wasn't it Arkansas? Do I have the wrong team? No, they were 9.5-point favorites, and it was like the trendiest dog I remember of the tournament because that team had just had a big upset and they were playing disgusting basketball. No, okay,
And they beat Zaga?
yes, because
was it Wichita State? Maybe
I bet the shit out of Gonzaga that game, and it was like my ultimate prime fade the trendy dog. And since then, Gonzaga's been dead to me. So I don't know if I have the opponent wrong, but I don't know. I didn't know if you guys were Gonzaga fans and that loss was ingrained in your memory, but maybe it's not. Maybe it wasn't that big.
We're only fans in math. We didn't grow up.
Oh, I thought you were actual. I thought I see a bulldog behind Thomas, so I thought he was like.
That's because that's who I bet. I put the banner up because I got a futures parlay. I need them for the final leg to hit for like 55K. So I put this up as some good luck. It hasn't worked out that way though.
2022, 4-seed Arkansas beats number 1 seed Gonzaga 74-68, March 24th, 2022.
Okay. So you nailed it. I mean, we should have known better than to doubt you. I mean, that was clearly in the front of your brain.
It was one of my biggest losses in the last 5 years.
Damn.
Yeah. So I hate Gonzaga.
The must bus gotcha.
Yeah, he did. He absolutely did.
Oh, did he take his shirt off in the locker room after?
I don't know what he did. I think I turned my TV off and I just cried and went to bed.
One more thing, and then I want you guys to also think about this. Let's play this forward. At the end of the show, I want you both to give me 2 Final Four teams and 1 top seed, like top 3 seed that will lose in the first weekend. That's kind of fun, and it gives us options here. So 2 teams to make the Final Four, and then one of the higher seeds to get knocked out first weekend. But I wanted to kind of go back quickly to what I talked about with Titus. And I started to keep a list over the years of those second day coaches. And my number 1 guy that would win Thursday, Friday, and then play Saturday, Sunday was Brad Stevens. In my opinion, there was nobody better at the quick turnaround, the adjustments, the schematics. I mean, he would have those guys in that ballroom for like 6 hours. And they would have everything scouted and planned out. You know, there are a lot of coaches that were on my list. Stevens was always one. Self is another one. Obviously, Izzo, Pitino, guys that just know how to win by taking away what you do well. So if Rick Pitino plays in the second day of a weekend, it's going to be very hard for me to bet against any team that he coaches. Same thing with Self. If they can win a game, which who knows. Same thing with Izzo, even though I know some people might not be as high on Sparty as some. But those coaches, I've always felt like, even when Pitino was at New Mexico and they would play Saturday or Sunday, I would find myself betting them more times than not. That's another weird wrinkle that, again, isn't like a blind strategy or a blind trick or tip, but those coaches that I really adore on a short turnaround, always something I consider. Is there anything else that anybody else wants to throw out?
Can I ask you on the topic of coaches that you trust? Is there some doubt as much as I like the Alabama team that I've watched a handful of times this year, I'm starting to think I'm out on Nate Oates. Would he be a guy that is on your do not trust list?
I'm kind of with
is
you.
he TBD?
TBD leaning don't back.
Okay.
Tom seems like he's more don't back.
Well, you know what it reminds me of? And I'm not trying to say anything bad about the Ravens, but the Ravens are a great regular season team. They destroy inferior opponents, right? And then they'll beat a couple of good teams and they'll get you thinking, all right, this is it. This is the year, right? Alabama's starting to remind me of that because every year I come into the season not liking them. They're not going to play good enough defense. Then they blow away all these inferior opponents and they get a couple of good wins. And I'm like,
you fall for it.
All right. Okay. So that's what I'm wondering is if this is a fun team to watch, a lot of athletes, but when it comes down to the end, are they going to play good enough defense? And I know they made a run last year. And again, I just think they had the right draw, but they also play dumb basketball sometimes. Like, I don't know, like, do you have to shoot 35 threes if 2 are going in when nobody can guard your guards drive into the basket? I think I don't know. I get his, and listen, they score 90 points a game. It's hard for me to criticize, but I'm just saying sometimes I just think they play dumb basketball. I'm not saying he's not a good coach, but I see where you're kind of going with it.
Threes and layups, right? Threes and layups. Oh, did they have a draw last year? Charleston, Grand Canyon, North Carolina. Just 3 teams.
He did
that
play UConn pretty well, if I remember correctly.
They did.
Yeah,
they
did.
better than anybody in the last 2 years.
Yep.
I mean, that
I
game
give him
was
credit for
tied
that.
with,
But I think by then you got the tournament is so big about getting 2 wins, right? Because then you start to get confidence. These teams start. So those draws are so important to me early on when you're trying to pick a team who maybe can make a run. But they did. They played UConn a lot better than I thought they would.
By the way, I would say I am totally okay with backing, and I have been backing Nate Oates. I mean, any team that beats Houston, there haven't been many this year, right? I think is certainly worthy of you. I mean, obviously price matters as always, but the way they play is just so impossible to guard. I mean, Florida played an unbelievable game last night. I mean, that I don't think anybody in the country is beating Florida the way they played last night. So I don't really get too down about that. I mean, with the way they can score, there's no deficit that is too big for them. So I think he's a really good coach.
I think the one guy
and to your
below
point,
average against that Saturday, Sunday slate, Kelvin Sampson, guys. I mean, that's a guy that he always has a top 10, 15 team. But on top of there always being that game where they score 57, there's that Saturday, Sunday dark cloud. And I just can't. Here's another one from the chat. Dana Altman. There's another one. Dana Altman, and I used to love betting on John Beeline Saturday, Sunday. I cut you off, Tom. My bad. What were you saying?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I don't want to – there's only a few teams that can beat Alabama. I'm not saying anybody listen, they score 90 a game. I'm talking like Sweet 16 on. They'll have to, but you can count on one hand. Unfortunately for them, some of those teams are in their conference, so you see it. But once they get out of there, I mean, Michigan's not going to play Alabama and beat them.
No, you're right. And by the way, Dana Altman it depends. Am I laying? Am I an 8-point favorite with him, or am I an 8-point underdog with him? Because it matters. There is no world where I'm ever laying 8 with Oregon. I mean, it really depends. I think he's a great schematic coach, but I wouldn't just say, oh, it's Dana Altman, I got to bet this game if they're -4. Like, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I think he covered against Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did get that done, but that's a dead man walking.
No,
situation.
I know. I thought Indiana was terrible.
Yeah.
I told the boys we'd be out by 8, so I want to keep my honesty intact here. Let's go around the horn one more time. I know it's difficult, so humor me here. We don't have brackets. We don't have seeds finalized, of course. But if I were to say, that you're going to put these 2 teams in your Final Four, and you're going to knock another team out early. Degenerate, you have that perplexed look on your face. You lead us off. Two Final Four teams and a team to bounce early.
Well, I hate to just repeat myself because I've already given away my secrets, but I don't know what seed Michigan State will be, but I am not buying into them at all. And I heard somebody talking about, gosh, who was it? I forget where I was listening to it, but he made a really good point. He was like, I think Izzo really likes this team. Like nobody's that great, or no, there's no superstar, but they all play really well together. And I don't disagree. Like I do think I watched them play Maryland. That was a pretty ugly game. But I do agree that they like each other and that they play well. And I usually buy into teams like that, but I just think they're going to go on this like 6 to 8 minute drought and not be able to play comeback from it. So I'm going to be out on Michigan State early. And then 2 teams to make the Final Four again, just to kind of repeat myself. I'm liking Texas Tech. And I'm in on St. John's. Like you talked about Alabama, which I think is a great point. Like there's only a handful of teams that are going to beat Alabama because they can score so much, and a lot of other offenses in college basketball can't keep up. That's why every year I look for this San Diego State type of team that has these 5 defenders who take pride in playing defense and love it and live for it. And on top of that, you talk about Rick Pitino. I mean, I don't want to buy. I feel like I'm buying the stock so high because, everybody's loving. And Rick Pitino was just interviewed on Pardon My Take. And, there's all these clips and sound bites. Like, how do you not love the guy? He was incredible. So I'm nervous about getting too high on St. John's, but I'll put them in my Final Four as well.
Hell yeah. I didn't hear a 1 seed there. So I love the,
I was trying to be a little different. You know what I mean?
I'm going to give a 1 and a 3 seed, I think. Again, we don't have the seeds. Johnny, how about you? 2 and 1.
Yeah, I'm going to take care of the 1 seed for you. How about that? I'll take care of the 1 seeds in the discussion. All right, I'll be brave. I don't need a Presidential Medal of Freedom. I don't need a Purple Heart. Duke and Houston are going. Duke and Houston are going to the Final Four. Duke, I don't even know that they'll see resistance until then. Quite honestly, the way they're playing right now. Isaiah Evans is emerging off the bench. Can't miss. Just don't get Malik Brown back. I mean, there's not a weakness on that team at any point. So Duke's going to be there. This is Kelvin Sampson's best shooting team ever. Oh, by the way, they still guard too. So that's the other thing. It hasn't come at the expense of the defense. And then a team that's going to go out earlier than they should is Texas A&M. I know they won against Auburn, and so some people are going to say, what are you talking? Like, Auburn could not have cared less about that basketball game earlier this week, okay? They had literally nothing to play for. They're banged up. They didn't have Denver Jones. A&M had to have that game just to have a pulse again. They had lost 3 in a row. But the thing about Texas A&M is, like, they get in rock fights, but they usually hit themselves in the head with the rock instead of the other team. Very low IQ basketball team. They really don't – I mean, their offense on the first shot is as bad as it gets in college basketball. They depend on those offensive rebounds. And I just don't think that's a sustainable way to live, man. I just really don't. They'll get rebounds, but I just don't really respect them as a real contending team. And if they're a top 4 seed, I think it's going to be Cancun, possibly even in that 4-13 game.
Tommy.
Yeah, I'm going to go even bigger chalk. I do agree with Degenerate. I think St. John's and Texas Tech are the 2 teams off the beaten path, the top seeds, I think, that could make a Final Four run. I do. Both of those teams have things that I like about them. But listen, I don't know how many upsets we're going to see in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 this year. I don't know if it's going to be one of those crazy tournaments. A few years ago, it felt like Baylor and Gonzaga were on a collision course. They were supposed to play during the regular season. Game got canceled. Feel the same way about Duke and Auburn. They did play in the regular season. It was an incredible game. I feel like they're the 2 best teams. Houston's just a shade below them, I think. But I don't know if those are the teams that are going to get beat this year. I really like the way Auburn and Duke match up with a lot of different teams. And Auburn's impressed me because they win different ways. They win 53-51. They beat Alabama by scoring 90. And I think that's important in the tournament. And I don't know if there's a specific team I'm going to fade, but I agree about the Big Ten. You look at the Big Ten and I just see how are these teams going to match up with more athletic teams in the tournament? I don't know. I think fading the Big Ten as a whole isn't a bad strategy, as was mentioned before. And so that's something I'm going to be looking to as well, especially as favorites, like, Michigan State, like you give me 7 points with Izzo and Michigan State. That's where I'm in. That when they've been underdogs this year is when I bet them. And one other team that I think is just absolute garbage is Marquette. I don't think they have a chance. They have 2 scorers that I just don't like them at all.
Shaka's making lots of appearances on this show, Sammy, and none of them have been positive. It's when he fucked you in 2013. He fucked me every other time I bet him, and Tom is saying I ain't betting him either. So what's weird is that he actually has a winning record against quad 1 teams. That's the crazy thing.
I'll tell you a quick funny Marquette story because I know we're about to sign off. When I was at the Big East tournament last year was when they had Kolek, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I was in this section with Marquette fans, and I had a Marquette. I'm always a sucker for Marquette, and I had them 60 or 70 to 1, and I told the Marquette fans next to me, I don't know, there was like it was a streak they went on, or they won the game or something. I turned around, I was like, I got you guys 71 to win it all, and they all froze for a second, looked at each other, and just started pointing and laughing at me like the guy in Simpsons. They're like, that is a terrible bet. So I got to respect Marquette fans because at least like they don't think they're somebody they're not. So
one more comment from the chat here. Jake says, I believe Bama could lose to a 6-7 seed in the round of 32.
Nate Oates.
That's
why.
That's why. The Shaka and Nate Oates have been getting a lot of daggers in this episode. All right, I'm going to put Duke far. I'm going to put Wisconsin far. I know Big Ten not as sexy as people think maybe, but 83% at the line. They could stick it. This is not our older brothers Gonzaga with Brian Butch, right? This team can get up and down. They've got some athletic wings, and I need my guy Klesmit to be healthy. Yeah. I need him out there. If he's not out there, I'm cooked. But I'm going to go Duke Final Four, Wisconsin Final Four, and I'm going to take out Iowa State early.
Take out Iowa State?
Bang.
I like it. I like that.
Okay.
Not buying it.
Well,
Thomas, if I had Auburn 28 to 1, I would treat it like Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. I'd probably put 3 units on Duke, to be honest with you.
Well, listen, I had Oregon 11 to 1 entering the college football playoffs. I got Auburn 28 to 1 entering the NCAA tournament. If anyone can blow both of those, I'm the guy to do it. So, I'll have a hell of a CLV story though 10 years from now.
Oh man, this was so much fun. Please follow our guys at the Degen Weekly, at John Martin 929, and at the Tom Casale. We did 45 minutes. We could do 45 more, but let's be real. It's 8:00 on a Thursday night, and some of us have lives. So, guys, thank you so much for being a part of this. Good luck with your brackets. Good luck with your bets, and it was fun chopping it up.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All righty, there they go. The Degenerate, John Martin, and Tom Casale. Last thing here, if you're watching right now live on YouTube and X, hit that like button. We've got over 1,200 of you watching right now. If you appreciate what we do, hit that like button, subscribe to the show. If you missed anything, you can hit that rewind button, or you can watch the YouTube show, or you can find us on Apple and Spotify. It is Chicken Dinner, and it is powered by Odds Logic. We're going to be playing a lot of Missouri Valley unders for tomorrow. Once these games get posted, these totals mostly go down. We saw a lot of movement early this morning, and then, of course, the first game flew over by like 25, 30 points. So then everybody else started to bet the overs. It's a weird way that people bet the Valley. But if you get that first dead game, then the under money tends to come in the rest of the day. So we're looking, whenever these come out, whether it be midnight Eastern or 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern, we will be looking at a lot of these Missouri Valley unders for tomorrow for the Friday slate. But nothing else tonight. Enjoy the college basketball. It's wire to wire for the next, 3 weeks or so. It's going to be a blast. And this is our time. We usually have a pretty good run in the tournament. So let's hope that happens. And let's hope that those of us that are on the fence about Duke, look, they're still minus 140 to make the Final Four. I know. You don't want to lay 140. You want to bet 100 to win 2,000. That team, if you think about Duke in the first 4 games, they're going to be favored by 30 in the first game, 17 in the second game, 10 in the third game, and 7 in the fourth game in the Elite Eight. They should roll into the Final Four. And the best part about betting minus 140 now It's as high as minus 170, by the way, so get the best number. In the Elite Eight, I mean, what's that price? Well, not the Elite Eight, in the Sweet 16, after they win the first 2 games, that minus 140 becomes minus, you name it. Put whatever number you want. I still think that even at minus 140, maybe worth a play. All right. That does it for us here on a Thursday night. Thanks to all my guests, Mark Titus, the Degenerate Weekly, John Martin, and Tom Casale. We will see you right here, same time, same place, 7 o'clock next Thursday on Chicken Dinner.